Our worship theme for the month is mystery. And what a great topic. I think I've been sitting here thinking that one of the real mysteries is how me and Suzanne keep coordinating outfits without ever talking about it. Should we be planning this on purpose? We look great. As some of you know, I have a special appreciation for historical intrigue, mystery, and calamity. Like the fact that we can't figure out where all those enormous giant squids live. I know. They've only been seen 25 times in the past century. Google it, list of colossal squid sightings. This is not normally how my sermons start. But I love these mysteries. Every time a squid crops up, I'm like, yes, they've emerged. I like Mystery Lake, great name. It's a high glacial lake in an uninhabited area, very promising. In the Himalayas, also promising, where human bones appear every spring when the snow melts, because in the 9th century, a bunch of pilgrims perished there, and they just figured out recently that it's because they were caught in a hailstorm and pelted to death. Isn't that weird? I love it. Anytime mummies are discovered anywhere, I'm on board. A shoe found in a bog from the 7th century. Yes! Yes! The mystery of the Mary Celeste, the ship that was discovered floating adrift in the Atlantic Ocean in 1872 with no one on board. I'm close to cracking that one. In my living room. Or what about all the historic incidences of ergot poisoning? Have you heard of this? Some of you have. Isn't this cool? For us, not them. Ergot is a fungus that sometimes grows on rye or wheat, mostly rye, and if you make bread out of it and eat it, you can have convulsions, delusions, and hallucinations. And no one knows how many weird things in history that just don't make any sense at all were actually just another outbreak of ergot poisoning. We don't know. Outbreaks of witchcraft just cropped up repeatedly in Europe in the 15 and 1600s, every year after a bad year of ergot growth. I know. They didn't know that then. It's been implicated in the Salem witch trials. Disappointingly, there isn't much proof. But a lack of proof or explanations or reasons is really the defining characteristic of mystery. And I love a good mystery. Maybe you've heard of Occam's razor. It's the idea that in a mysterious situation, probably the simplest explanation is most likely the right one. I would like to introduce you to Skochko's razor, which is that the most awesome explanation should be the right one. Justice Scalia's death, ergot poisoning. The 2016 election, national ergot poisoning. Why we forget to wear our name tags at church, you decide. But ergot's not just associated with witchcraft, it's associated with religious experiences of holy possession, hearing voices, entering trances. The fact that such revelations, especially during the Great Awakening, for what it's worth, the fact that they may have been caused by purely organic means rather than divine means, that's actually not cause to ridicule them or to consider them as anything less than the powerful visions that they were. I mean, a number of tribes in North and South America make regular intentional use of psychogenic substances like peyote or ayahuasca to facilitate spiritual experiences of deep import. Now, the point of this hallucinogenic digression is not to encourage you to go on a vision quest in the desert and eat peyote and say, my church told me to. I told you to bring snacks on Sunday. Regular snacks. Chocolate chip, not herb. Although I do encourage you, each of you, to follow a free and responsible search for truth and meaning as you see fit, and you have my blessing and my trust. Now, the point of this is to make it clear that the line between hearing the actual voice of God and being under the influence of godlike chemicals, that line is actually pretty blurry, and I'm not sure it matters. Before the skeptics in the room think that I'm just discounting religious experiences out of hand and saying all those people were lying, it was all in their head, I'm not. I'm trying to reconcile my belief in science with my belief in people, who for millennia have reported hearing divine revelation as a source of their most sacred knowledge and belief. I don't think everyone in the Bible who reportedly heard the voice of God just got a hold of some bad rye bread. I don't. But the person within me who's both captivated by mystery and yet wants to solve it, the scientist within me, is intrigued by the idea that everything we need to have a mysterious, revelatory, religious, mystical experience, everything we need might already be within us, here on earth. Working as a hospital chaplain, I've now seen enough new parents, entranced by their newborns in those first moments, to feel that something powerful must be at work when a mother smells her baby's hair for the first time. And before you say that's just chemicals, let me say that I myself am just a sack of chemicals, mostly water, a little bit of salt here and there, some snacks thrown in every Sunday. And as an inexplicably self-aware and sentient sack of chemicals, I am offended at the idea that just chemicals is not enough to constitute a legitimate religious experience. I have fallen in love, and I know that the feeling can be fleeting, but the fact that it's ephemeral and largely the result of just chemicals doesn't make it any less real and wonderful and transcendent and mysterious. That's why people write love songs and compose sonnets and build Taj Mahals, to put that feeling into stone, to convey it to others, to convince others that it happened, that it's real, that it matters. And even if you haven't fallen in love, and a lot of us haven't, you know that it's important to others because of these signs they have left. And it's why humans often make their holy places, their temples, their shrines, their masjids, beautiful, to make solid the feeling, the beauty of the feeling of being connected to God. Now, I've been throwing around the word God, and there's a contingent always of Unitarian Universalists who have been injured by religion in the past, and they cringe whenever it comes up, and I'm with you. I'm one of you. I do this translating act in my head whenever we're talking about God, as I reach deep within myself to connect with whatever I feel is most holy or meaningful or transcendent, even as an agnostic, which I am, so that I can understand and connect with other people when they're talking about God. It's more important to me to forge these bonds of understanding than to interrupt them and tack 95 theses to their face mid-conversation. And so I've gotten so good at this translating act that I find myself throwing around the word God without qualification. But rest assured, atheists, agnostics, humanists, and pagans, if I have a God, it is not the one who made proclamations in the Bible, spoke directly to people, and used he/him pronouns. Reverend Frederick John Muir writes that God is a word we've come up with to describe what no other word can. For Muir, God and the cosmos are one and the same. He says, I've called myself everything from an atheist to an agnostic to a pagan, all done in part as a reaction to the misuse, overuse, and perversion of the word God. He says that the most profound abuse has been accomplished by Western religions that have accorded their God with human-like qualities, as well as raising God well above nature. He says, my God is neither anthropomorphic, in other words, not the sort of God who's going to talk to you directly in a God-like voice, word for word. My God is neither anthropomorphic nor supernatural. To me, it's absurd and meaningless to conceptualize a higher power as having attributes like humans, in addition to being above and beyond what we hear, know, see, and feel here on this earth. Now, I've wondered how many people throughout history have purported to hear the voice of God, but have instead heard a voice within themselves, or have gotten a feeling from the way the breeze moved in the trees, or have been struck by the beauty of the stars, or just shaken to some new understanding at their core and simply called it God for lack of a bigger or better word. God is a word we've come up with to describe what no word can. Or they even believed it was God, a different God than mine or Frederick Muir's. And I would like to put aside the notion that we all worship the same God, or let alone have a God. I'd like to set aside the notion that all religions are at their core the same. They aren't. They definitely aren't. The major world religions differ widely in their understanding of the nature of salvation, for instance, the ultimate reality of the universe, the source of goodness and knowledge, the role of revelation and prophecy, what it means to live a good and meaningful life, how to do it, why we're here, and yes, how and when God speaks to us. Those are not minor details. We can't brush those under the rug as being inconveniences. I think all this creativity and variation displayed in human religions is a beautiful source of strength, not a weakness, not evidence that any of them are necessarily invalid. We often want to think in our goodness and our well-meaning that all religions boil down to just the same sentiment, like be nice to each other. If you have one of those bumper stickers that says, "My religion is kindness," I know your heart was in the right place when you bought it. Please don't rush out during coffee hour to peel it off your car. I mean, if that was your only religion, you could do much worse. At least it's not like my religion is human sacrifice, right? But reducing religion to something so small does an injustice to how vast and complex and beautiful it can be. I want my religion to be bigger than that. Plus, it's insulting to people who have to pray all the time or leave offerings at an altar or light candle. Like, wow, you got off easy. Kindness? Man. Religion encompasses and honors the mystery in human lives, and for many people around the world, it's not just kindness, it guides their days, marks out the seasons of their life with sacred rituals. It gets buried with them in flowers and song. It's more than kindness. It's sacrifice, celebration, dedication, remembrance, a sense of awe, and a relationship with the largest possible mystery of our understanding or imagining. So that's my pitch for religion here at the church, and for not being afraid of the word God. I don't know what you thought you were getting into coming to church today, but it's a lot of religion. I think with our hearts open to the complexity and mystery of the human experience and the diversity of others' beliefs, it's harder to dismiss then those accounts, those historical accounts of those who have heard God speak. Here I will give you the obligatory warning that often when they've heard God speak and they know what God really wants, God's instructions are just conveniently in line with what they themselves already believe. Okay? So we don't just believe everyone. We have some necessary, responsible skepticism. And sometimes when people hear God speak, they are in fact psychotic. That is not a joke, right? And there may be people in this room who themselves have struggled with mental illness. Sometimes the God they hear tells them to do bad things. And it's a phone call I get every once in a while at the hospital as a chaplain. After the psychiatrists have done their thing and come up with a treatment plan, the person who's recuperating often wants to speak to a pastor to talk about their experience, someone who will listen to them and believe them. And so on Friday nights, that would be me. My job is to go and listen to them start to finish, and sometimes there is no finish, to help them work through what this experience means to them. My job is not to decide whether or not it's real. My job is not to tell them they're wrong, but it's also not to confirm that, yes, God is speaking to them and telling them to do things. And that's sometimes why they ask to talk to a pastor, right? That I'll be the one that says, absolutely, God told you to go do those things. So on the one hand, I can't say that their experience is really all that different from someone taking peyote in a ritual setting. and that it's an altered version of typical reality. I can't discount that. Or someone from the Bible who saw a burning bush, or someone with ergot poisoning. On the other hand, in my experience, the God who so often speaks to people with mental illnesses seems to have a lot of bad ideas. And that can be really distressing for the person hearing them, and it can be distressing for the people around them. One of the more common things I've heard is that God has commanded someone to tell everyone about Jesus, even if they don't want to hear it, and to never stop because it's the devil opposing them. And I think on the inside, oh, please don't do that. But my job is to honor their experience and not to judge. It's important to feel like we've been heard. It's important to share our experience with others. I find it entirely possible that even people who don't believe in God, based on my experiences, I find it possible that even people who don't believe in God can listen hard enough to the truth within themselves and have a profound religious experience. So the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, great online resource, lists a number of different forms of religious experience. But the one about hearing revelation from God, often subjects experiencing that report seeing or hearing, but they quickly disavow any claims of having an actual sensory experience with their eyes or ears. Those experiences, the encyclopedia says, are easy to dismiss just as hallucinations, but the subjects of that experience frequently claim that though it's entirely internal, like a hallucination or an imagination, it's nevertheless a real experience for them, through some sort of spiritual analog of the eye or ear. In many cases, the language of seeing is used as an extended sense of realization, and I'd like to lift up the reality that ableist language often associates knowing with seeing. Let's just get that out there. So often these experiences of the voice of God or of hearing God speak are metaphorical. The Quran makes it very clear that some of its stories are to be interpreted metaphorically only. And that metaphor, by the way, was basically the only way Jesus taught, except when he was angry and fed up with people not interpreting his metaphors and taking them too literally. So those of us who've been holding out for hearing an actual, verifiable, audible voice, instead of the very earthly feeling of having the inside of your chest gripped by awe, well, maybe we haven't been listening hard enough to our own gods. Not a supernatural, all-powerful God who somehow stands outside of our natural world, yet micromanages it at the same time, and leaves voicemails directly to us. But a God entirely compatible and coexistent with the realm in which we live, who speaks in mysterious ways. And so I would like to repeat the poem from Stephen Dunn, Welcome. And I invite you to be a welcoming presence, to welcome what revelation comes to you in whatever form it does. If you believe nothing is always what's left after a while, as I did, if you believe you have this collection of ungiven gifts, as I do, right here, behind the silence and the averted eyes, if you believe an afternoon can collapse into strange privacies, how in your backyard, for example, your own backyard, the shyness of flowers can be suddenly overwhelming, and in the distance, the clear goddamn of thunder, personal like a voice. If you believe there's no correct response to death, as I do, that even in grief where I've sat making plans, there are small corners of joy. If your body is sometimes a light switch in a house of insomniacs, if you can feel yourself straining to be yourself every waking minute, if, as I am, you are almost smiling, amen. Amen. Blessed be.